tons of hardware news, but let's start with this. I know that many people are like, when do we get more affordable graphics cards? We've gotten 4080, 4090, we've got a 4070 Ti, but the 4070 Ti is still MSRP around $800. When are we getting 4070, 4060, 4060 Ti, all of that? Well, videocards.com has apparently, according to their own exclusive sources, which would be in the like board partner type side of things, are claiming that the RTX 4070 is currently expected to launch in April. That means that there was a long wait between the 4070 Ti and when we're expecting the 4070. So if you were thinking hold off just into February, March, well, you could have a ways to go. Now, they are very clear to state that this could change. This is just an embargo timeline that videocards.com claims to have, but I think I would trust this to be true as of now. But again, as they are saying, that doesn't mean that this couldn't change before the launch actually occurs. So they say that NVIDIA embargo information is provided on a frequent basis to the board manufacturers and all of that. So basically, this is the current plan as made known to people involved in the process. Anyway, if you're curious on the current rumors of a 4070, because there are no official specs from NVIDIA, we do know what the 4070 Ti looks like. The current rumored specs on the 4070 look like this. So compared to the 4070 Ti, it's on the same 8104 GPU, but it would be further cut down to 5,888 CUDA cores versus the 7,680 we see on the 4070 Ti. It's also looking like the base and boost clocks are rumored to be lower. Again, all of these things are rumors. That would get us 29 teraflops of compute power versus the 40 teraflops on the 4070 Ti. They would both be featuring 12 gigabytes of GDDR6X on a 192-bit bus for both of them, giving them the 504 gigabyte per second memory bandwidth. And the 4070 would come in at significantly lower TGP at 200 watts versus 285 watts. And again, that's going from January all the way out till April, till we get that follow-up. So that's a little disappointing for people waiting, but like I said, it's all rumors seem to have pointed to it being a while, and this is the latest one. I think it's a pretty good source. Now, in other NVIDIA news, if you were looking for NVIDIA laptop GPUs, we've got some numbers here. I don't want to take all the results, but there's a lot of reviews out here. I don't get laptops sent to me. So I'll mention Jared's Tech does a good job covering gaming laptops. And if you look at the 4080 versus the 3080 Ti, you can see that this is the laptop GPU. You can see some good generation-on-generation performance gains. We also have some 4090 laptops out there. And I did want to mention the hardware unbox video. Again, all my sources will be in the description, where it talks about the unfortunate naming of the laptop 4090. Because you have to think about, there's a desktop 4090, and that has a certain number of CUDA cores, right? It's using a certain GPU die. Obviously, a laptop has to come in at a lower power target. But the laptop doesn't only come in at a lower power target, it's also just not the same GPU, with its specs matching up closer to what you would see on a desktop 4080. So with that in mind, please don't buy a 4090 laptop expecting anywhere near the gaming performance of a desktop 4090. And when you see the price tags on these laptops, it might be tempting to think that they're offering you a similar performance level to a desktop 4090. There's tons more information in this video. Please take a look. But at 4K on average, they were seeing the desktop 4090 56% faster, and some games like Hitman 3 and Cyberpunk showing over 80% faster on the desktop 4090. So just be careful there. There was also an NVIDIA driver update partially to take into account the new laptop GPUs launching, but then also with some game optimizations and whatnot and fixed issues. Now, speaking of NVIDIA driver updates, we're expecting another one coming out in February. That should be the R530 drivers, which would support the video super resolution in the Chrome web browser. This is an interesting feature. This information about the time frame for this is apparently coming from an NVIDIA staff member who did say later this month in our R530 driver branch, stay tuned, when referencing the video super resolution. Now, it's pretty interesting. There's a little bit of details here. Because first of all, it's only coming to the newer 3000 and 4000 series GPUs at first, and again, through Chrome. But it's also looking like it'll only be active when running on external power supply. So if you think about running this on a laptop, I guess this does increase energy consumption. So it'll default to be turned off if you're running off a battery on a laptop or something like that. Which is interesting. So anyway, that's coming from the NVIDIA forums that we should be seeing that later this month. I've already reported that Chrome itself has been updated with some code to run the video super resolution. And I guess I should mention what that is if you hadn't been following it. Basically, it'll upscale, use the AI trained upscaling algorithms on video that you're streaming through your browser. So you could take like a 1080p video, watch it on a 4K screen, and it should look sharper and closer to native 4K, that kind of a thing. Although, while the NVIDIA demonstration looked very good, that was their advertising demonstration. We'll want to see what that looks like in person, but it could be a cool value add to the product. No, it's been recently reported that the Intel Arc GPUs have got major improvements through driver updates, and their software is getting a little bit better, along with price cuts, getting the Arc A750 down to $250. Now, while that definitely makes it a better price to performance than NVIDIA GPUs in that class, my thought has always been, yeah, but if the RX 6600 or XT from AMD is around that price point, that's probably the way to go, but I haven't updated my testing. I'm seeing videocards.com reporting here that the Tech Testers channel has run a bunch of testing on the A750 versus the RX 6600 on the latest drivers. And there's a few interesting highlights to point out, and then again, link will be in the description for the full details. One thing is that the Arc A750 is drawing significantly more power, both while gaming and at idle. So if energy consumption is a concern, it's still definitely losing there. The 1080p test results ended up with the RX 6600 leading by 3%, although game by game there could be some big swings. And in the 1440p results, they actually had the A750 winning in almost all of the games and coming out with a 9% lead on average, which is pretty interesting. Now, the exact set of games that you test, I think, could affect this a lot because, again, one of the big problems here is still the game support, especially older games, that has been improving on Arc, but it's still not perfect. Now, the other thing I'll mention is actually looking into the pricing, because if I pull up PC Part Picker right now and sort prices low to high, the RX 6600 I could actually find for around $230, $240, whereas the Arc A750, $250 to $270. Okay, so the Arc is a little more expensive. And then if you actually look for the 6600 XT, you can find it for around $260, so very close. And that's almost 20% faster than the 6600. And if you look for the 6650 XT, you can also find that around $260, and that's more than 20% faster than the 6600. So while I will say that this was an interesting test against the 6600, if the A750 is only winning by 9% at 1440p, but you bought one of the XT or 6650 XT models, then I would imagine we'd still see a win there for AMD, or at least a tie. And then I think the lead at 1080p would be extended to a lot more than 3%. Now, this video also had some interesting stuff, like looking at the energy consumption difference over time and the actual price that, dollar value. So anyway, take a look at that video for some more details on that testing. I'd like to get around to some more Arc testing in person myself in the near future, but just haven't had time yet. Now, in other Intel news, we're seeing the Intel i9-13980HX, which is a high-performance laptop GPU. retaking the top spot in the PassMark mobile CPU rankings. I had recently reported that we'd seen the Ryzen 9 7845HX take the top spot. Well, we now have the 13900HX and 13980HX both passing it. However, I will mention that the Ryzen 7845HX is not the 7945HX, which I think should go up to 16-core rather than 12-core here, if I'm remembering all those specs correctly. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those results. And again, this is just one PassMark score, so we shouldn't read way too far into that as like a total review or anything. Now, in other Intel news, in more the rumor side of thing, hardware leaker One Raichu on Twitter has said the target of Meteor Lake is to realize a 1.5x, in other words, a 50% better efficiency compared to Raptor Lake when it has the same performance. Same core processor, P and E. Also, in a reply, saying about the integrated GPU, I think it maybe will reach almost 2 times the performance levels. And they're looking at 128 execution units at 2 gigahertz versus 96 execution units. Anyway, interesting stuff, but again, leaks and rumors, but could be excited to see what we see from the Meteor Lake chips once they do eventually come out. Now, not a leak or rumor, official from Intel Create Twitter itself. There will be an Intel Xeon W processor launch livestream event on February 15th. Now, these are more workstation-focused Xeon processors, so I'm probably not going to cover too much of this, but I thought I'd mention it briefly. And in other Intel CPU news, Tom's Hardware has the article Intel Says Goodbye to Rocket Lake CPUs, and their 400 and 500 series chipsets are end-of-lifed too. Although, don't immediately think these are going to be gone, as the headline might lead you to believe. It's actually looking like they're announcing that these processors will start to get phased out. It's going to take a while for that to actually take place. So let's see, where did we actually get the date? They had it somewhere in here. I had it highlighted, and I've apparently lost it. Oh my goodness, and I film these things live with no time for editing. Look at me going super professional. There we go, February 23rd, 2024 is when the final CPUs and chipsets will be shipped. So it's still a year before they'll stop shipping their final shipments of Intel's 11th gen processors. So anyway, those will be getting phased out. Also, Intel does have a new graphics driver update, and this one is giving us day one support for Hogwarts Legacy and Returnal. So it's nice to see Intel getting that day one support for games. We also have some known issues listed and whatnot. So I didn't see a lot of other fixes or anything coming along with this. So it looks like it's mainly the day one support for Hogwarts Legacy and Returnal. I've got some Hogwarts Legacy testing already done on the channel if you're interested in the performance of that game. I may cover Returnal when that one comes out. We shall see. Now, in some AMD-related GPU news, one thing I saw that was interesting was a RX 7900 XT. A lot of times I check out the Build a PC sales subreddit for good deals being posted. You got to filter a lot of stuff that isn't maybe great deals, but we did see a 7900 XT listed at $830. Now, I'm not going to say that that's an amazing deal on this card, but I will say it's the best deal we've seen. These MSRP'd at $900, and it was widely criticized that that was way too high, especially considering the XTX. The extra X only cost you $100, but got you a lot more performance. So it seems like some of these models are now scaling down to a more sensible price to performance difference between the XTX model. The question now is, does this card make sense compared to a 4070 Ti from Nvidia? The 7900 XT in my testing is faster in rasterized performance, loses in ray tracing performance if the ray tracing performance is very demanding. Nvidia has, its reputation and its other technologies like DLSS 3, things like that. So there's a lot to talk about there. However, I will mention that while I did see it in stock at that $830 price, Yesterday, when I checked this morning, it's gone up to $860 on this listing. So it did go back up a bit, and also it's a BioStar reference card. So my understanding is this is just one of the reference cards, and it's from BioStar. And I don't remember seeing a lot of GPUs from BioStar lately, so interesting. Also, if you're worried about the reference model cards, remember it's the XTX that was having that overheating issue, not the XT on the reference designs. Anyway, nice to see some price movement down on that card anyway, and I hope to see it to continue coming down. Other AMD news, we're seeing the Power Color Radeon 7900 XTX Liquid Devil model releasing both some pictures as well as talking about its Unleash BIOS mode. So it looks like it'll have two BIOS settings. You can have an OC mode, but then the Unleash BIOS, which will go up to a 2680 megahertz clock speed. Now, while it is noticeably higher than reference specs, it's not going to be the only Radeon 7900 XTX custom card to feature those specs. You can see the specs listed here. Now, if you're interested in what this one looks like, we did see some official images posted here. I think it looks quite nice. And then we've also seen some more on Twitter coming out from, so you can see a couple more shots of it. I think the card looks really nice if you're interested in a liquid-cooled Radeon. Now, I have thoughts on the value side of liquid cooling it, but if you're chasing good overclocks on that card specifically, could be an interesting one to look at. Now, in other cooler model news, we're seeing MSI officially introducing RTX 4080 and 4070 Ti Gaming Trio white cards. So you could take a look at those if you are interested in white builds. And other cooler news, we're seeing the Radeon RX 7900 XT Sakura to launch on February 22nd in the US. These are kind of anime-themed cards, so if you're interested in that, there you go. Looking like the price listed here currently is pretty high for an XT model, going over the price of an XTX, but hopefully once that's actually out, we see more reasonable pricing on it. We're also seeing AlphaCool launching liquid cooling for, AIO coolers for custom GeForce RTX 4080 and 4090 graphics cards. Now, the custom models, when you're looking at what cards these actually support, so these are AIOs, right? So it's got that. It's not like I was showing on the Liquid Devil where you need a custom loop. This is an AIO. Anyway, one interesting thing to look at would be the compatibility, which is listed here. So you would want to check if your card would be compatible if you're interested in using those. And we're also seeing a new water block from Watercool, which would be compatible with the RTX 4090 Founders Edition. So basically, a lot of the extra custom cooling stuff is starting to be available now if you're interested in those types of modifications. Now, in other quick news, here's something I really hope ends up being true and working well. I'm seeing it reported at videocards.com that Windows 11 is working on its own built-in RGB lighting control without requiring a third-party app. Now, there would be a lot of questions if this does come out on how well it actually works, if it's able to do all the things you want it to do, but a lot of people, myself included, hate having the RGB control apps installed on my PC. I don't like having all that background stuff. I don't need it. Sometimes you might install it, set the lighting how you want, and then uninstall it, that kind of a thing. But it would be nice if you could just do some basic tweaking through Windows directly. And there are screenshots being posted in some early access Windows 11 builds that actually do have a new personalization setting for lighting, and you can click on your gaming keyboard. Looks like a Stream Deck from Elgato's showing up, a mouse, that kind of stuff. So anyway, I think that's pretty interesting. I really hope that does actually come out and have at least provide some basic functionality if you just want to change the color quickly without installing some massive app to do that. Now, more follow-up news. I've been reporting on Samsung's 990 Pro SSDs, reporting their health dropping rapidly. It looks like a Samsung forum moderator has indicated that a firmware fix for the 990 Pro should arrive later in February. I'm seeing this reported by Tom's Hardware, but apparently the statement is in a forum post. Anyway, it'll be nice if they actually get a fix for this. I'm also interested whether it's the health actually getting worse or if it's misreporting. But we'll have to see where that goes. Now, in other Samsung news, there's an Samsung Odyssey OLED G8 34-inch, and this is ultra-wide, so this is the 3440 by 1440 monitor now available on their website. Now, I was looking into this. People who watch my channel a lot know I'm a huge fan of OLED monitors. I'm actually filming this video right now on the Alienware equivalent of this with the FreeSync, not the G-Sync version. Anyway, this appears to be offering pretty similar stuff to the Alienware QD OLED, because this is QD OLED, same size. This one goes up to 175 Hz refresh rate, and I don't think there's any mention of a G-Sync module. So it seems like, the FreeSync version of the Alienware that I have right here only goes up to 165 without trying to do any of your own kind of overclocking to it or whatever out of the box. So it looks like there might be a few small advantages. There's the different actual just design to the stand that you might like, that kind of a thing. But the overall price tag looks to be $1,500, which is significantly higher. I found this Alienware one, I think it went a little bit on sale. I got it for $1,100. Again, these are all extremely expensive. But I would say that reading through the specs, I didn't see anything here that made me, that seemed to justify the hundreds of dollars more for this versus that. So anyway, we'll see how prices adjust on the actual market, or if in actual reviews there's some other advantages to that I haven't seen. Now, AMD is apparently grabbing over 30% of the CPU market share, and as Intel's share declines. However, keep in mind that this is not just gaming and desktop CPUs. A big part of this are their EPYC CPUs in the server space. Now, also quick information, Atomic Heart should be coming out soon. And at WCCF Tech, they had an interview with the devs where they did answer a lot of questions about shader compilation, specs, all of that. And one thing that they did have was the actual system specs for a wide variety of, 30 FPS, 60 FPS, medium, high, ultra, 4K at 1080p, and then going up to 4K ultra settings. Now, another interesting thing that they mentioned here was that they're saying that these are the frame rates that you should expect as minimums during a firefight that's pretty demanding, and that in normal gameplay you should do significantly higher. And if I shrink myself out of the way, it actually looks pretty reasonable. If you want to play 1080p 30 FPS on low settings, they're saying a GTX 960 or R9 380 with only 8 gigabytes of RAM with 12 recommended. I think they said you can only use 8 gigabytes if you don't precompile shaders, and if you're precompiling shaders, you'll need 12 gigabytes of RAM to not have a stuttery experience. But then it's looking like, you can get 60 FPS 1080p low on like a GTX 1060 or an RX 580, and again, the CPUs listed here aren't too crazy either. Kind of goes up from here. I don't want to do a full system requirements video on this one, but take a look at that. I think these seem fairly reasonable, especially if they're saying those are the minimum frame rates that you should see. Now we are seeing Intel Sapphire Rapids Xeon workstation CPUs rumored to hit over 900 watts in Cinebench R23. I just thought that was interesting. Don't want to dwell on it. And I've got to get my kids up and ready for school. They are feeling better now. Some of you asked after the last video, so I think they'll be up for school today, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.